O Lord, open thou our lips. And our mouths shall show forth thy praise. O God, make speed to save us. O Lord, make haste to help us. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Ghost, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be,
Well done. Thank you, Michael. We'll see you in a few minutes. St. Mark's Cathedral acknowledges that we gather on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish people, who are still here, and we honor with gratitude the land itself and the life of all the Coast Salish tribes. Welcome to this evening's forum on the Evensong pilgrimage from this past summer. I'm James Wilcox. I'm a member of the parish, member of the Evensong Choir. This is my wife, Molly, also in the Evensong Choir, and we will be your MCs for the evening. The theme of the evening is how pilgrimage is kind of like wandering. And so we'll be sort of wandering through our slide deck and wandering through the pilgrimage and wandering through the various presenters. And our first presenter is much shorter than me, so there's really no need to raise this mic, right? Fair enough. Please welcome to the stage, Rebekah Gilmore.
Hi, everyone. So it's my pleasure to tell you a little bit. Oh, what do I hit? The big.
Right.
Okay, great. It's my pleasure. Oh my gosh. It's my pleasure to tell you about the Evensong Choir. So this choir was formed back in 2015 when Canon Michael Kleinschmidt began his work with us. And I had been here working with the choir school, and together we decided that we needed an ensemble that gave our some of our choristers that needed more challenge a place to sing. And in the model of the Men and Boys Choir of England, but much more inclusive, we began the Evensong Choir. And so our chorister program invites those senior choristers and high school SCOLA members to let me know that they are interested at singing to sing at a higher level with more challenging music and with four-part really strong harmony. They make that intention known. Oh, hold on, I'll get there, Greg. And those choristers are then invited to join the Evensong Choir. Given the high expectations of that choir, we have to make some careful decisions because we have a list of expectations for the Evensong Choir. For instance, the expectation is that any singer in the Evensong Choir can be pointed to and asked to sing their part by themselves. The expectation is that during a rehearsal, they're tracking everything that's going on, not just their own part, but the other voice parts that are being rehearsed so that they are ready to jump in when the moment comes that their part is to be rehearsed again. Also that they're learning from what the other parts are rehearsing. So it's just the next step up in music making. We pride ourselves on being at a semi-pro level at that point. So the kids are ready to engage in rehearsal with full focus. Okay, so that's that's the gist of the Evensong Choir, in that we have kids as young as 10 up through high school, and then of course the adult contingent, that those adults know that they are there in support of the growth of our choristers. That choir then sings on the first Sunday of the month for Evensongs here in our nave at 4:30. And so we have a repertoire that Michael will talk to you about later of music that is perfect for those liturgies. And then we every 3 years take this trip to England to sing that music in a place often for which it was written. And that's an opportunity for the kids to really step into the roots of our tradition. So that package sets up the Evensong Choir to be something very special. And I wanted to tell you why I consider it to be so special. It is one of the key intergenerational ministries of St. Mark's, where you have that wide spread of age brackets that are coming together for the same purpose. And that purpose isn't just hanging out, that purpose is leading liturgy together. So that work that we do together is in service to the cathedral and the worship life of the cathedral. So what does the Evensong Choir look like? Well, we have, it's almost fairly split down the middle of minors, kids, the choir school choristers, and the adults. And so the adults provide the alto, tenor, and bass parts, with a lot of sopranos coming from the senior choristers and the sopranos of the Schola. So what does it look like to travel internationally with 21 minors? And an additional, what are my numbers here? An additional 18 adult singers, some of whom are kids too. Yeah, so this is an important point, that on our traveling party totaled 54 people, and 18 of them were adult singers, myself included. 21 of them were choir school, and 15 of those 21 were minors. There were 4 staff members that went along, and I asked Michael this today. I don't know of any cathedral program in the nation that travels with an intergenerational choir and that many young singers. There are choirs that travel all young singers, and there are adult choirs that travel with just a couple. But thankfully, we have robust participation from our choir school choristers, which just adds to the depth of this experience. So how do we take that many minors overseas? I thought I would give you a little hint, just preview into that, or a little sneak peek into that. We have, let's see, you can go to the next picture, or I can. Oh, wait, hold on, go back. Okay, so these are some of our ducklings. We call them our ducklings. They're the unaccompanied minors that don't have parents along. And this is them after the day of travel to get to Lincoln, England. And you can tell that they've got a sparkle in their eye, even though they're exhausted. Right. So I wanted to say something about what we learn from each other in this travel experience. You have probably traveled with your family before, maybe multiple generations, and I want to highlight probably what you already know, which is that the young choristers have not traveled like this very much. They have not kept to such a rigorous schedule of rehearsals in the morning, liturgies in the afternoon, events during the day where we're on a bus traveling and paying attention to hearing, guides telling us about architecture and history and all that. It's a rigorous schedule. And for a lot of these kids, they're just like, but I don't eat anything with sauce. Yeah. And I mean, so those kinds of things that are hard for them, they are not used to paying for their own meals. They're not used to having to pick something without the guidance of their parents that they can eat. They're not used to staying in hotel rooms with another minor, right? So those are all skills that they're developing while they're traveling with us. On the flip side, the adults, as we all get older, jet lag is jet lag, and it's harder the older you get, I think. At least that's what I'm finding it to be true. But we have a certain wherewithal, having traveled before, to know I can make it through, it'll get better. So as we travel together, we learn those skills from each other. And I always try to remind everybody before we leave on this trip that everyone is watching each other for how we handle those exhausting moments. You've been out all day sightseeing, and now you have to sing a liturgy together. So I'll show you a couple of other pictures quick. So here are some of our senior choristers that are prepped to sing our Evensong liturgy together. They look a little bit happier, don't they? So this is funny, but this is our schedule. And I wanted to show you because not just you see all the color coding, that's the kind, each color represents a kind of experience that we're having together. Whether it be a liturgy that we're singing, or a tour that we're going on, or rehearsals, or free time. This represents all the different kinds of activities that we do. This is called our chaperone schedule. And the reason is that every adult that goes on the trip is responsible a couple of times during those 2 weeks to oversee the care and safety of our children. They are all Safe Church certified, but they don't necessarily know what to do with kids. So it's a learning curve for everybody. And so the kind of day that we have can really impact your experience as a chaperone if you're responsible to fill 4 hours with 5 12-year-olds, right? At the bottom, you'll see the list of all of our chaperone rotations. Again, I bring this about I want to highlight this, not because you necessarily care how we keep everybody safe. I mean, maybe you do, but it's so that you understand the way that these age brackets are integrated and learning from each other. So as they don't know what to eat, there is an adult there that's keeping an eye, making sure that they're getting what they need. 2 adults, thank you. Safe Church, that's right. Okay. So there they are. These are the younger ones. There's some good pictures of the schola coming too. For these kids to walk in the footsteps of those who have filled their shoes prior, right? Who have sung this music in these buildings. They've sung a note. We know back centuries, a note of music that we know has been sung in a space, and that reverb has come back to those singers just what we get to hear ourselves. In the service of the liturgy of corporate prayer. And truly, as we are walking the stairs to our rehearsal space, those stone steps are indented with the footsteps of the thousands and thousands of other people or steps that have walked right where we have walked. And you walk your way up literally in the footsteps, in the grooves of those who have been rehearsing the very same music that we are rehearsing, and leading the same liturgies that we are, and praying to the same God that we are praying to. So it's an opportunity for the kids and the adults, not just the kids, to feel the fullness of time and how we as worshipers within our tradition have raised songs and prayers over the centuries. That is transformative work. It's also rigorous work, but it's transformative. I'm going to tell one other silly story, and then I'm going to welcome up Nora, who is a member of the Schola, who's going to just give you, here's Schola, a few of our Schola singers. Oh, and there's seniors again. Oh, our Schola. Oh my goodness. So what's always educational for me is I learn a lot on this trip. Let me tell you one thing I learned. So I'm regularly texting the kids and the chaperones. Where are you? What's happening? Because they're always out with their chaperones, right? There was one night that I knew that they were out with William and I forget who else you were with. Tim. Oh. And I just wanted to know, hey, where are you guys? So I texted the group chat of Scola and I said, well, where are you guys? And they texted back, we are heading to dinner. We're bussing. We're going to the Thai place, or I forget where you were going. And I thought, oh, okay, that's fine. They're with William and Tim. They're on a bus. They're going somewhere to find dinner. And so I spread the word that the Scola was on a bus somewhere getting dinner. And I came to find out that was not, in fact, how they were traveling. Apparently, bussin' is a vocabulary word I did not know that meant they're doing great. And those kind of divides, like that could have been bad. But it wasn't. Everybody was okay. They were with great chaperones, but we learned things, and those intergenerational conversations, that's a silly example, but it truly is an eye-opening time where we share with one another insights that are particular to those age brackets and that we're all fuller because of it. So I will invite Nora up now to give a little history, of her experience. Yeah, I know.
Oh, I'm so much shorter than the two of you. Okay. Hi, everyone. Hi. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Nora. I am a senior in high school, and I've been in the Evensong Choir for this is my second year. And I've been in school for 3 years now. Before I joined St. Mark's, I had always been in choirs of my own. I was in Seattle Girls Choir, choirs at school, just kind of various things. Been singing from a very early age. It's always been something that I loved, something that I cared about, and something that was a deep part of me. But after quitting one of my old choirs, just because I needed a new change, it had been 10 years, we needed something new, I was talking to my friend Annika, and which many of you know. And this was at the same time that my parents wanted to switch to a different church as well. So I was like, where else could we go? Like, I don't want to go to somewhere where like I don't know anyone and it's weird. So my friend Annika said, well, you should just come to St. Mark's, like come hang out with us. At least like I'll be there and it'll be fun. So a couple months later, I'm going on a youth retreat, and all of a sudden I'm in choir again at St. Mark's. I couldn't stay away for more than 6 months. I had to come back. And so yeah, over my life, choir has always been something that has brought me home. Whether it's just been like the home that I felt in the space that I was in, or the music that I've gotten to sing, it's always been a very calming like process for me. And I think that this was exemplified nowhere better other than in these old, beautiful cathedrals in England, where, as Rebekah said, many people had walked on these stairs before. Many people had seen what I was seeing. Many people had heard the same bells that I was hearing. Yeah, and so kind of what I've gotten out of St. Mark's that I never really realized before in singing was kind of the deeper level of singing and what it means to sing for liturgical music versus just like, I'm in a choir and I'm on stage and everyone's looking at me, versus what does it mean to sing for someone else, for their spirit, for the soul, for religious purposes, which I think is something that has made me a much deeper and better person, and also the people around me who get to do this. Furthermore, I went on this trip with my brother Isaiah, who has been in some of these pictures. He's 11, he's short, he's small, he's very cute. I love him so much. And it was really cool to be able to go on this trip with him, to see him, because both of us were ducklings, so our parents weren't there, but to see him kind of grow into his independence. Like, he had never had a debit card before. I don't think he ever paid for anything for himself before. Did he ever choose what he wanted to eat really on his own? no. And so it was really cool to be able to see him blossom into a more independent person, more confident in himself, as I think it did for everyone there in all different ways. Furthermore, for me, like, I had never really hung out with a bunch of adults in that way before. And so it was really cool to be able to bond with people who had much more experience than me and the things that we were doing and just life overall. Like Carmen and I, we ended up bonding over, we both went to the York Dungeon, which was a like haunted house type thing. Did not expect to bond through that. And so I think just like throughout my life, I've been wandering through music, wandering through choir. And I think this trip and this program overall has really helped me come home in myself and grow into myself as well. And so I'm very grateful for it overall. Thank you.
Thank you, Nora. So next we will hear from an adult perspective with Dr. William Hawley, Bass 1 or Bass 2, sorry, apologies.
Hi, everyone. Sorry about that. My name's William Hawley. I am a parishioner and a member of the Evensong Choir. And I am here to give you a little bit of a perspective, I guess just my perspective, really. And that is that I came to this, this was my first pilgrimage with the Evensong Choir at St. Mark's. But I had been on an Evensong pilgrimage with a different St. Mark's in Berkeley, California, to Ely and Bristol, which are two cathedrals that are known to this Evensong Choir. And that choir was fully adults. And so I thought that I more or less knew what I was getting into. Also, I was in Berkeley to get a PhD in geology, and I had taken a bunch of undergraduates on field trips to look at rocks. And I was very used to the idea of going with younger people with an idea of, this is what we want those young people to get out of this experience. And here's how we're going to help them understand the significance of the things that we're looking at. And so I just thought that this pilgrimage was going to be more or less a combination of those two things, which like should be clear, these two things are amazing. Like there is real value in just adults going, as Rebekah said, and walking in the footsteps of people who have been worshiping in these places for hundreds and hundreds of years. And there's real value in going to outcrops in California and teaching people about how the earth has evolved over millions or hundreds of millions of years. And these are very valuable. But I think what really surprised me about this pilgrimage with this choir was, number one, I think, as Rebekah hinted at a little bit, these young people are very bright. And it was amazing being in situations where I felt like I was learning from them as much as they were learning from me. I was learning from the way that they responded to history. I was learning about, when we were talking about the politics of the mayor's race in Seattle, things that weren't even about where we were, just getting to know young people. I was very surprised at the insights that some of these people had, much more insight than I think I would have had at that age. But I think the other thing that really struck me was that as adults, the collective responsibility of young people and their safety as well as their learning helps just the adults to bond. I think the shared responsibility that we have, not just to make sure that we're having the spiritual experience that we want to have, but to make sure that other people are also having their own spiritual experience. That responsibility was not something that I had foreseen, and was something that's the major takeaway, I think, for me from this trip was the community that we build together, this intergenerational community. And yeah, it feels a little bit like the famous city or urban planner. I guess she was not a planner, but more of an activist, Jane Goodall. Not Jane Goodall, Jane Jacobs. Jane Goodall was also a famous person who had ideas about interpersonal relationships. But Jane Jacobs' Eyes on the Street, and like this idea of a community holding place together and learning from each other and keeping an eye on each other, really strengthening those bonds. I think that we kept eyes on each other and got to know each other a lot better in the process, and were able to use our collective priorities to really advance our own, everyone's collective spiritual bonds. So I think that's all I have to say about that.
Thank you. And we might get another special guest appearance from his geological expertise later. So before we transition to our next part of the night, where James and I are going to discuss what we actually saw and did on the pilgrimage, where we went, we want to have some time for conversation with each other. So Rebekah Gilmore wanted us, had posed this question, but had to go to choir. Identify a childhood experience that opened up your world, and to talk to together as a group. What aspects of that experience really shaped you? How did it influence the adult you are today? Was there an intergenerational aspect? Was there a spiritual aspect? But did you have something like this kind of pilgrimage experience as a child that shaped you? So we'll talk for about 5 minutes.
Let us come back together. Does anyone have an experience they'd like to share with the room on this idea of opening oneself up?
Anyway, I connected to God.
Oh, do you want it?
Oh, I give them the mic.
Yeah.
I'm learning how this works.
For me, it was very different, but I connected to God through formal worship of the church, which went on day by day at the school I went to. So it's very different, but it helped me to be persistent and never give up. And the same old words can have a deeper and a special meaning. The same old words.
We definitely got that on our pilgrimage this summer, saying the Magnificat every day. Other perspectives to share?
So in my mid-teens, my dad and I went to Australia for 2 weeks, which my mom wasn't exactly happy about, but that's another story. 1 week, we did a lot of sightseeing, and one of the places we went was a prison that had been run in the early days of Australia when it was still a place that Britain sent people it didn't want there for various reasons. And hearing you all talk about the walking up the steps and the grooves caused by untold thousands of people over a hugely long time, walking up them and singing the same song has brought that back to me, because there was the same sort of sense, if slightly darker, of just knowing that so many people had been in that space and there'd been so much human experience, and in this case, suffering. I think intense emotional experiences, whether good or bad, definitely leave an imprint.
Thank you. Definitely true. Okay, in the interest of time, we should probably continue to talk about the ins and outs of our day-to-day pilgrimage.
And now me. What happened to the remote?
Here. Oh yeah,
Oh. Here's the mic and here's the remote. All right. Oh, you already switched the slide. This is us. We're wandering through the stages of pilgrimage. So we got married this summer in July. And thank you. We took the 49 from St. Mark's to our wedding reception. So that's the first picture. And then The first half of our honeymoon was the Evensong pilgrimage. So that's the second picture. And then the second half of our honeymoon was a walk through Norway. And this is us, I think, on our first day when it was pouring down rain, and it was forecast to pour down rain for the next 6 days, all of which we were planning to walk all day. So it was a very exciting time. It turned out not to be quite as rainy as it was supposed to be, so it wasn't so bad. But we feel like the whole summer was kind of a pilgrimage. So we're just connecting that to what we're going to talk about tonight. So what we're going to do for this middle section tonight is sort of the nuts and bolts of what happened on the trip, where we went, who was there, and we'll share a bunch of pictures. So we'll start with Durham. For those of you who don't know where Durham is, this is the United Kingdom. This is where Durham is. So it's in what the English people call the North. Okay, and they always pronounce it like that. And it's way up there. So if you're like me, and before I went to my first pilgrimage with the Evensong Choir in 2018, I thought England was a rectangle and London was in the middle. And this will break you out of that thought process very quickly. It's way up there. Durham is an interesting city because it sits in this strange bend of the River Wear, and the old city is inside the bend, and the castle and the cathedral are on top of this hill. So it's a very naturally defensible position historically. And this is what the cathedral looks like on top of the hill. It's actually built, you're looking on the left side is the east end, on the right side is the west end, and the west end goes all the way to basically a cliff over the river. So there is no west door in Durham. It's just a west wall on top of a cliff. And so you enter the cathedral through the main door is on the north side, and we're looking at the north side here. So that also gives interesting views of the cathedral from far away because it's up on a hill, and you can walk around on the river. So this picture on the right is us across the river on a walking path, kind of looking up the cliff at the west wall. And you can see how there's no way in from that direction, right? That's just wall. All right. We also had fun on the river, and Molly's going to tell you about messing about with boats.
This is just a little reference to The Wind in the Willows. There's just a great line about there's nothing like messing about with friends and boats. And we did have fun on this trip, even though I had a harrowing experience learning how to row, but we had fun in addition to our religious experiences. But we are going to mostly focus on religious experiences as we recap the trip. We did go on some other excursions to some beach towns and so on, but we'll focus mostly on the cathedrals we visited. So Durham, where we were stationed for the week, we went on some excursions while we were there. It's this really cool Romanesque / Norman cathedral, and it's a World Heritage Site. It's really cool that it doesn't charge admission, unlike pretty much every other cathedral in England, I think they told us. It has these classic Romanesque curved arches and these like amazing, huge stone pillars. And this is a really cool Lego recreation that we got to see that they used as a fundraising campaign. And if you paid a certain amount of money, you got to put a brick on the Lego. I thought it was just really cool. And it was really cool to actually learn from stonemasons who do the daily work of refurbishing these stones in the cathedral. And all, like, if you look at that pillar to the right, it's only one kind of stone, just all flipped over in different formats to create those lines, those zigzag patterns, which is really cool. The cathedral has devotions to Mary. There's this really cool, we had a photo of this, I believe, upstairs in our cathedral. There's a really cool wooden sculpture, Pietà of Mary and Jesus in the cathedral. And we did a really interesting Blessed Virgin Mary service on the Friday we were there that was actually very well attended by the parish community there. Durham did have a pretty active parish. And there's also devotions to Bede there, the great English historian who wrote about the great Cuthbert there. Cuthbert's kind of like the English version of St. Francis that I did not know about before this trip. And there are many charming stories that Greg and I were just reminiscing about how St. Cuthbert, according to legend, when he was praying in the frigid North Sea, his feet were warmed by otters. So he was able to be kept alive because otters like dried and warmed his feet. And anyways, it was really fun to learn more about Bede and Cuthbert as we were there. And James is going to talk about the choir room a little.
You have such a way of handing things off to me. Yes, so we were using this choir room, which is pictured on the left here, and it sits on the second story. And if you know anything about medieval architecture, you know the second story is where the good stuff is, right? It's hard to get up there. It's drafty in the winter. It's way too hot in the summer. We were there in the summer. You can see those huge windows in there letting in all the hot sun. And then we would get vested downstairs in the chapter house, which is pictured on the right, which is on the first floor. Beautiful, warm in the winter, cool in the summer, a great place to get vested. And so we spent time running up and down those stairs. And so that was the choir room, and this is the choir room.
Yeah. Trying to use this.
Okay. So if you're not familiar, the choir with a Q is the name for the place where the choir with the CH stands to sing the services, right? So this is a little dark in this picture, but the choir with a CH is standing in these wooden stalls, and that's Michael conducting there. So you get a little picture looking out from down the nave towards the west end there of where we were singing from. And then the organist is sitting on the second story again, and looking. So this is a photo that John Stuntebeck, our organ, took looking down at us from above. I think at this point we're probably walking through, trying to figure out where we're supposed to stand. But you can see that we're a divided choir. We call that decani and cantorus are the two halves of the choir that stand on opposite sides of the aisle. The dean's side and the cantor's side is where those words come from. And so a lot of the music that we do plays on that division, and we'll sing, one choir will sing something, and then the other half of the choir will sing it back and things like that. Okay.
So while at Durham, we made some great excursions, such as to the Holy Island, a tidal island of Lindisfarne. I'm sure Steve could tell us a lot more about this. But beautiful place where St. Cuthbert prayed and lived, and really great hiking opportunities there. We were just sad to not spend more time there. Beautiful place. We also went to Hexham Abbey. Here is me becoming the dean of Hexham Abbey, apparently. And they have these beautiful, this is a 7th century building that has been refurbished, unlike those ruins at Lindisfarne. These really cool medieval Dance of Death paintings were there on these wooden panels. We also learned about stonemasonry from like a real live stonemason at Durham. I'm like really locked into this conversation. There's William, me, James, Carmen and Matt in the background, and then this stonemason, Sam, who also worked at this pub we were at. It was really cool to like hear from him about the actual work, his passion for stonemasonry. And here's a cool Lego gargoyle he made that actually like functioned as a gargoyle. And William is going to return and tell us a little bit about the cool rocks at Durham that he was really interested in.
Yeah. Right. So these cathedrals are made out of stone, by and large. And the stone is really old, and the stones can tell a story. And I think what I'm looking at here, these are all sandstones, and I am pointing out something called crossbedding. Crossbedding is a really interesting type of rock, sort of a type of structure that you'll see in sedimentary rocks, which is the sandstone is laid down not as a stone, but as eroded some other stone, laid down as a layer of sand. If you've ever been to the beach, you might notice that sometimes that sand can move around, right? You drop the sand in one place, it doesn't necessarily stay there. That sand can get pushed around by water or wind or whatever. And so what these cross beds are, okay, I'm pointing at an example that I think is actually somewhat difficult to see. This one has a lot of cross beds in it, but a much more obvious cross bed is this one right here. So you can see that there are these more or less horizontal layers here, and then there's like this line there, and where these horizontal layers don't meet up with those guys. This was all deposited, and then water, presumably, took this section away So we were only left with this. Who knows how high this was? It could have gone to here. It could have gone to here. It could have gone to here. And water removed all of that stone. And so all we now have is this was the bottom of the riverbed, and then more sand was deposited on top of that. And this is, yeah, I guess just an interesting phenomenon in sedimentary geology, where you don't actually know how much stone there was. You cannot know. It's completely lost to history. And I think that there are some parallels with what we experienced in the cathedrals, where we know that people came and sang, but we don't know their names. But they're still important.
We can see the lines they left in the stairwell, but we can't hear the sounds that they made with their mouths. All right, so that was confusingly the second week. Now we return to the first week, and you'll see why we did it in this order in a second. So there was Durham up in the north. Here's Lincoln. And again, we've already established that I know relatively little about English geography, but to me, that also looks like the north, right? It's north of London, so that must be in the north, right? Turns out to English people, this is not the north. This is something completely separate called the Midlands, okay? And the Lincoln geography is also interesting. There's a river that runs through the middle of that photo. It's really hard to see on this projector, but there's kind of what looks like a fog cloud sort of hovering in the middle there. And then you see this purple dot that says steep hill. And indeed, it was a steep hill. Luckily, both the cathedral and the hotel were at the top of the hill. So we could only, we only had to deal with the hill when we wanted to. But again, it's a beautiful cathedral. This is the west face again. Now we can actually go in the west face. One of the best west faces in a medieval cathedral in England. Is just awe-inspiring. And Molly will tell you about imperfection.
Yes, here's one of my nerdy spiels. So Lincoln is a Gothic cathedral. It had eras of it has some of the rounded Romanesque arch, but is largely a Gothic building. It kind of lost its earlier Romanesque, most of that earlier Romanesque building of Norman influence. And one of the things we noticed at Lincoln was just like so many things we thought were kind of imperfect in the cathedral, such as the vaulting is not very symmetrical at all, feels kind of random. And then this image to the right is near where we lined up to sing in choir, and you'll notice there's like one weird arch that's added. Like it doesn't feel like they measured correctly on the cathedral. And the cathedral is just full of all of these like angles that didn't really add up, and we would kind of mock. But I had long heard about the Victorian art critic John Ruskin. Something they tout on tours of Lincoln is that Lincoln is, to him, the most important English cathedral. It is the most important building in all of the British Isles to John Ruskin, who's like one of the most influential Victorian critics. So I started reading some John Ruskin. Here's my weird wandering spiel on what to him makes great Gothic architecture. And it's actually in that imperfection, that it's a kind of sense that has been lost by his time of the Victorian age. He says that these are the most important elements of the Gothic, that there's a savageness, a kind of crudeness and imperfection compared to like classical architecture with its perfect lines, a changefulness, like stonemasons were like always willing to change directions, change their plans. They did not have one preordained plan. A naturalism of sense of nature, a grotesqueness or disturbed imagination, as we'll see with some of the artwork, a rigidity there's a sense of like energy to Gothic buildings, and a redundance that in our time at Lincoln, there were just so many random different flowers that you would never see the same flower twice carved at the cathedral. And I love this line from Ruskin that this in all caps, the demand for perfection is always a sign of a misunderstanding of the ends of art. So if we point out the flaws of a Gothic cathedral, we're actually kind of misunderstanding the greatness of what Gothic architecture is. And here are just some of those like weird individual carvings, like the Lincoln imp in the top right, part of the disturbed imagination. And the imp is actually the name for Lincoln's football team named after him. This fun owl I like. And then to the bottom left, we've got an individual stonemason. And so that was one of my favorite things about Lincoln, is seeing all of these individual carvings as part of this greater art. And I like this quote that Ruskin has about how Christianity has recognized, compared to like classical civilization, classical architecture, the individual value of every soul. And there's a way that there's this great freedom in Gothic architecture, that these individual stonemasons were like crafting themselves. They're crafting little leaves, crafting little owls they see, unlike this like perfect way that Victorian architects expected architecture to function. But yeah, there were just so many fun little facets of Lincoln that we all enjoyed. And we, here's the choir room in Lincoln, James is going to talk about.
I'm back for choir with a CH. So this one is also on the second floor, also has all the same properties that I mentioned of being on the second floor as the other one. This one has benches, which was nice. And there were windows you can see in the background there that were open to the street below. And there's a street that runs around the cathedral. And we were rehearsing one afternoon and we heard clip, clop, clip, clop, clip, clop, clip, clop. And we were like, is someone playing the sound of a horse? And no, we looked out the window and there was a horse driving by, a horse and buggy. I think it was a tourist attraction. I don't think someone was actually, getting from point A to point B on their horse, but it did make for a fun afternoon in the choir room. Here's a picture of us in the other choir. And you can see there's like an openness to this one where you just feel like it's a bigger space. Whereas in the Norman buildings, the columns are much thicker, the stone columns, and so you kind of feel closed in. You feel closed in kind of in a good way, but the openness is also nice here. Also makes it hard for the two halves of the choir to hear across. So one of the challenges in singing this in this style is if you can't hear the other side, it's very difficult to do these pieces that require the two sides to collaborate. All right, so here's a picture of the scola on the left. Rebekah was showing some of these earlier, and this is them in the cloisters lining up for Evensong. And there's, I don't know, is Mark still here? There's Mark. There's Mark standing under the subdecanus sign in the choir stalls. And we thought that was quite appropriate. And so I'm hoping that in the next capital campaign, there's plans to build a single stall in the nave that's just labeled subdecanus. I think that would be great for Mark. All right. We took an excursion to Peterborough in our Lincoln week, and this is a special connection for us because pictured on the left here is, on the far left, is Chris Skinner, who lives near Peterborough and is our biggest YouTube fan. I don't know if you know this, but we have a biggest YouTube fan, and this is he, okay? And he's such a big fan that he came and traveled both to Durham and to Lincoln separately to hear us. And he commented on every video that we had on YouTube during the pandemic. And he's just a great friend. And it was wonderful to get to know him. And he wanted to show us his cathedral. So he gave us a personal tour of Peterborough. We can see the painted ceiling here, which is kind of a rare thing. I think it's 1300s. And basically nothing like this survives from the 1300s because it's made of wood. So it's an amazing view. And this west face again with the recesses, I think is very striking. Anything else you wanted to say on this one?
We also went to the great York Minster, very different ceilings we see here. Enjoyed doing a walk around the walls of York. It was interesting. York felt a lot more like a tourist attraction to us. And there was a lot more emphasis that Clara had a lot of opinions, not to speak for her, she's not here, but about how York felt a lot like cleaner, newer, brighter. It felt more restored versus kind of Durham's like preservation to us. That's kind of some subjective opinions, but very different vibe there. There's also a lot of like Harry Potter tourism as well happening even now. Beautiful place to visit, but definitely a different vibe than our experiences at Lincoln and Durham that felt less like tourist attractions. And moving to the close of this Lincoln aspect, I really loved just like all the animal life that was at play in our time in Lincoln, like the horse clip clops, like all the animals carved into the cathedral. We had pigeons in our prayer. We had, what else? Oh, there was bats they're bats and pigeons. Like at one point, a bat fell into someone's lap shortly before we were at Lincoln. They allowed dogs into the cathedral too. And there are these nesting peregrine falcons there, which led me to really reflect on the shared etymological origins of peregrine and pilgrimage. They're basically the same word. In Spain, if you go on the Camino, you're a peregrino. San Pellegrino is related to. It's just kind of like an etymological, just a shift in pronunciation over the years. And like there was, when the Mayflower Pilgrims came to the US, the baby born on the ship was named Peregrine. Like there's all of these roots there. And I want to recommend this book, The Peregrine by J.A. Baker. It's just like an amazing spiritual exploration of peregrine falcons. It's just amazing. And James is going to tell us about another aspect of peregrination musically.
So at first I thought this was just a slip of the tongue, or I don't know, some kind of weird name that some medieval monk came up for something, but there's actually a logic behind it. So tonus peregrinus is one of the 8 psalm tones. Now we're all familiar with the 8 psalm tones, obviously, right? Well, let me just give you a brief recap, okay, of the 8 psalm tones. So in a typical psalm tone, it's divided in half, okay? And each half has a reciting note, okay? And you say almost all the words of the psalm on the reciting note, okay? And in the other 8 psalm tones, in the 2 halves, the reciting notes are always the same. So you see the big black square in the middle of the left half and the big black square at the beginning of the right half. They're both on the same place on the staff. It's the same note, okay? Same is true in the second tone. Same is true in the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and seventh, and eighth tone, okay? But it turns out in tonus peregrinus, they're different. The reciting note wanders, okay? And that's where it gets its name. I will spare you the sung version of this slide, but that's where the tonus peregrinus comes from. Okay, so you can find this in the hymnal. I'm sure you all brought your hymnals, right? So S242 is a setting of the Magnificat set to tonus peregrinus, and you can see it starts out on an A, and then in the second line at the word for, it goes down to a G, and we hang out on G for a while, and then we go back up to A, and then we go back down to G, and we wander around singing the Magnificat. Okay, so sometimes we do a setting like this at Evensong in Lent, so you can stay tuned for that. Okay.
We're not going to hear tonus peregrinus?
I think. Okay, the people are clamoring for me to sing it for it. My soul proclaims the greatness of the Lord. My spirit rejoices in God, my Savior, for he has looked with favor on his lowly servant from this day. So you can see how the first half and the second half kind of hang out in a different place.
Thank you, James. Yeah, it's a beautiful tone, my favorite. But yeah, I think it's just really cool, the different aspects of wandering, musical, ecological, spiritual, and so on. And the two of us wandered on after Lincoln and Durham to go to this Norwegian pilgrimage site, the northernmost it's described as the cool Camino of St. Olaf's Way, because it's literally chillier than how hot the Spanish Camino is. So a lot of people are starting to do it. Still, we only encountered a handful of people on our route doing it. But we had planned this kind of randomly, and we didn't know that Nidaros Cathedral in Trondheim actually has like the same column type that's featured at Lincoln, and those are the only 2 kind of curved columns in all of Europe in that type. So it seems that Trondheim and Lincoln, England, like shared stonemasons in the 11th century, which is just crazy to me. We also had like shared stonemasons in that when we were at Lincoln, there were stonemasons from National Cathedral visiting Lincoln to learn about their stonemason practices, like our National Cathedral. So I think it's really cool that like stonemasonry, like there's clearly such a dedication to particular places, particular environments, but there's like then and now, just like huge international connections, which are really cool to learn about. So transitioning on, I think let's have a little break. And before we hear from Michael about the musical aspects of pilgrimage, We'd like you all to discuss, we talked about a childhood experience, but here, share a favorite pilgrimage experience that has shaped you and why, and maybe get into some of those. Were there social dimensions, spiritual, ecological, musical, architectural, even painful aspects that shaped the experience? Lynn Cobb, who's really into the Camino, and she goes to St. Mark's, says that like it's not a pilgrimage unless there's pain. You have to suffer for it to be a real pilgrimage. So I'm curious if that resonates with any of you. So let's chat for about 3 or 4 minutes on what's a favorite pilgrimage experience you've been on. Okay, coming back together. Anyone want to briefly share a pilgrimage route they've been on, or a choral pilgrimage they've been on they enjoyed, or a pilgrimage of life? Or I went on a great pilgrimage to follow the steps and sailings of Moby Dick. So I really enjoy like literary pilgrimages. Wendy.
I got to go on pilgrimage to Standing Rock, and that was amazing. And I went to a Wichipi with a powwow.
Very cool. Other experiences? I actually worked at this Native American pilgrimage site, the Bighorn Medicine Wheel. It was amazing. Recommend everyone go. Only open during the summer because it's covered with snow most of the year. Any other share outs? Yeah.
Anyway, pilgrimages can be long distances, special long distances, many experiences. Pilgrimages can take place in people's own towns, hometowns. Just a story of an elderly lady, I guess 30, 40 years ago in Kansas, told me, and I've never forgotten her words. You know, she must have been in her 80s or 90s. I was confirmed in Durham Cathedral. So this brought back her words to me, and she said it in such faith and such persistence. Her pilgrimage in her town was by her parents taking her to Durham Cathedral to be confirmed. A lady of great faith. I wish I could remember.
Very cool. And that reminds me that James and I went on a walk with the local Puget Sound El Camino chapter from here to St. James Cathedral in Capitol Hill, and went on a fun walk with them across the city. And so like, yeah, definitely pilgrimage in your hometown as well. Okay, without further ado, let's move on to our final event, the one and only Michael Kleinschmidt, to hear about the musical aspects of our journey. Do you want to hold it?
Sure. Thank you very much. Isn't this marvelous? I clearly asked the right people to take charge in this event. Thank you, Molly and James. So I want to briefly talk about a few things that in the 3 pilgrimages I've taken with the Evensong Choir, 2018, 2022, and then this year. Something that I've noticed and really enjoyed is the responsibility we have as the choir in residence to step into the shoes of the resident choir, which is on holiday. And in so doing, we sing daily services, which is something very few American choirs get to do. And in singing every day for a worshiping assembly, we become so good so fast. And at the core of the worship service every day, which is Evensong, is the Psalter, the Book of Psalms. And it's in the chanting of large bodies of the Psalter, you know, not just one psalm each night, but multiple psalms, sometimes as many as 15 minutes worth of a psalm. We become not only tuned into one another musically, but tuned into the Psalter. And while it's a different translation than we're used to here, it's the so-called Miles Coverdale translation from 1662 prayer book. It is nonetheless still very, very powerful to pray. And watching the choristers and schola get involved in the words of the psalm is a great privilege. I think if you just ask someone on the street, well, what do you think a 13-year-old would make of the Book of Psalms? They'd probably just shrug, you know. But those of us who've participated in this kind of pilgrimage know that it kind of galvanizes them in a way that even our more sort of flashy settings of the canticles, the Magnificat and the Nunc Dimittis, don't do in quite the same way. So there's a tremendous depth there that we only begin to plumb in the 2 weeks that we are on pilgrimage. And that's one of the things that I most enjoy about these trips. Another aspect of singing a service every single day in a foreign place is that you have to get to know the furniture of that choir, Q-U-I-R-E, choir. And I wonder if we could go to is my slide of, oh. Okay, so here's the Lincoln Cathedral Choir. And as James said earlier, it's very open and very wide. And we struggled the first couple of days to hear one another across the way. And also the organ, which is kind of where the projector is relative to this photo, is a very gentle and rather slow speaking instrument compared to what we're used to here. And so John, our organist, fabulous as he is, was cautious with it. He thought, surely I'm making a lot more musical noise in the room than I think I am. But in fact, we could barely hear him. And we said, John, give us more juice. Come on, crank it up. More. And finally, by Wednesday or Thursday, we got the balance just right. And the choir felt supported by the organ and began to listen to one another in a easier way. So that's just one of those things that being on the road gifts us with, which is new ears listening in new ways. And if you're an organist, getting acquainted with a very unfamiliar kind of organ. Yes, William Byrd, you may have heard of him. He was one of the great Tudor era composers. He and Thomas Tallis, at the height of their careers, got kind of a special dispensation from Queen Elizabeth I to have a monopoly on publishing their music. And even though they were both Roman Catholic, and she was, striking this via media to kind of resolve tensions between the Roman Catholics and the Protestants. So they went on composing Roman Catholic music for underground liturgies, and at the same time publishing music in English for Protestant choirs to sing. And this place right here, Lincoln, was William Byrd's very first church job as a young musician. So before he went to the big time in London and served in the court, he was here, and probably in his early 20s. So there's a plaque, the round marker just in front of me is a commemorative bronze to him. And then a house in which he supposedly lived was behind the cathedral, behind the east end of the cathedral, not far from the deanery. It was a great honor to be walking in his steps, as it were. This is the chancel or the choir, Q-U-I-R-E, in Durham. So Lincoln, see how wide it is? And then in Durham, we're much closer together. And when we first sang in our first rehearsal in this building, we were just astonished. Oh my gosh, I can hear the other side. And it was very rewarding. But here the challenge was the organ, if anything, tended to be too powerful, and it was slightly sharp. It was slightly, just a few cents higher than A equals 440 hertz, which is what we're used to. And furthermore, our Flentrop organ is notoriously a few cents south, flat of 440, largely because of our generally cool climate in the nave. So one singer said, who has perfect pitch, said, I have no idea what notes I'm supposed to sing. I can't tell, you know, the organ's sharp. I'm just gonna sit here. And I said, oh, stop being such a diva. And eventually we all adjusted and got over it. There's John Stuntebeck at the organ console in Lincoln Cathedral. He looks very pleased to be there, doesn't he? Just above his head and to the right, there's a picture of someone on the console underneath, to the left of the monitor, and that is J.S. Bach. So organists tend to find Bach everywhere we go, which is as it should be. So John could see me or Rebekah when we were conducting in that TV monitor way above his own music. He also set his phone up to be a little closer to his music, so he didn't have to hold his head up high like this to see, because it's very awkward to play with your head up like that. I'm sorry he's not here to hear me praise him for his incredible flexibility and virtuosity in getting to know these strange instruments quickly enough to be able to accompany us in a way that made us feel secure. One of my happiest memories of this trip was a garden party at the deanery. In the middle of the group of people, which is all of us, you can see the suck center of the cathedral. Is it Darren? With his white tabs and the blue cassock. And then on the left is the dean. And they cohabitate in the deanery here and had us over one afternoon for a lovely party in the garden. And as you can see, we're very pleased to be there. Had a wonderful time. This was exceptional hospitality. Usually visiting choir is welcomed formally and kind of tolerated for a week. But in this case, we were exceedingly warmly welcomed and shown a wonderful time. I think they were very, very glad to have us there. Durham also was welcoming, more than many, but there was still a kind of a, I'd say a coolness about Durham's welcome compared to Lincoln's. A hallmark of this year's trip was a more concerted effort to take time for reflection as a group with Dean Steve. And so 3 times a week, we had an evening session where we all sat together in a circle and we had some lead questions. I don't remember them all, Steve. Would you like to jump in? What I do remember was, what about yourself do you think you will leave behind when you return home after this pilgrimage? I found that a very provocative question. The gist of it was, in what way are we different as pilgrims? Are we different from being tourists? And you know, with the idea that tourists are there to take and absorb, and yes, we were there to absorb, but we were also there to give and to give up and to be taken, to be transformed. And with questions along those lines, the discussion was just very interesting to be a witness to, especially among our younger participants. Steve, do you want to add anything to that? Or, okay. Yeah. And then one last photo. Maybe you've already seen this. This is the other really good group photo. This is at the end of our time in Durham, and we're standing at the crossing in Durham with the choir stalls behind us. And you can see part of the pulpit to the right. and the lectern to the left, the Eagle lectern. And from here, we went to our final dinner, and then the next morning parted ways. And that's all I wanted to share with you. I realize time is short, and we wanted to allow time for questions and answers. So do you want to field those?
Thank you. And I just had a thought about something that we brought back from a trip back to St. Mark's and back to our own evensong practice. There's more than one thing, but one that I can think of is during the creed, we face liturgical east now, which of course is west in Seattle, but it's kind of fun. So we learn stuff there. We bring stuff back with us. So now we have a couple of minutes for discussion and questions, and we'll be around. So happy to take some questions from the floor now, and feel free to leave if you need to leave, and we'll continue the conversation. Great. Either way is fine with me. Maybe we pray now.
Okay, we'll do questions.
Great. Questioning together. Adam.
Is anybody willing to share something that they left behind? I wondered if any participant was willing to share something that they left behind, borrowing the reflection question I just heard.
It's a good question.
I think I'll also ask the question, and what are you bringing with you? And one thing that I brought back with me is that Kathy and I celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary in Lincoln. And we went to a dinner at the recommendation of the Dean of Lincoln, which was 3.5 hours long, 6 courses of a prefix meal. And I still have some of that with me.
That is a good answer. Other answers to that question or other questions?
Canon Kleinschmidt, where will the Evensong Choir go next on pilgrimage?
Well, that's not fixed quite yet. We do have penciled in invitations from Wells Cathedral and, oh my goodness, no, Exeter. Thank you, Exeter Cathedral, Wells and Exeter. So in the southwest of England, very different from where we were this year. And that would be in 2028. So we are tentatively on their calendars as it stands now.
Exciting. Other questions for our microphone runner? Hearing none.
I just want to add my words of gratitude to Michael and Rebekah, James and Molly for leading us tonight. Will y'all recognize the work that they put into this? As Rebekah said at the outset, these are transformational trips, journeys, and it is in the sense of pilgrimage being more than just traveling or just taking consumerist trips. And so I just really commend pilgrimage as a spiritual discipline for us all. God be with you. Let us pray. Gracious God, it is with a sense of the long legacy of those whose shoulders we stand on in this tradition of Anglican worship the privilege of singing and gathering and worshiping in places such as Lincoln and Durham Cathedrals, to engage people who live in those places, to help understand one another as we make our way together in this journey, in this cathedral community. As we take our leave tonight, wherever we may we go with a sense of your peace and your presence, and always with a deep and abiding sense of your love for us this day and always. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. Next week, I don't remember what next week is, so is it simple gifts? No.
Yes, yes. Next week, our theme is simple gifts. We've got Molly Bosch and James Davidson who will be talking about what they're reading. And yes, exactly. Molly and James part 2, and how they're practicing hope in this particular season that's challenging for many of us. So please come with your own ideas, and you're invited to bring a book that you have read and loved, which you will have the opportunity at the alternative gift market to pick up a book from the same table that your book has been on, just as an exchange, a free exchange. Most of what we're offering at the alternative gift market, however, of course, will benefit our community partners and the Threshold Fund. But this is a special offering to tie into what James and Molly are going to be inviting us all to consider. So thank you very much. And then the week following, next Wednesday, Thanksgiving week, we do not have a forum because you're all welcome to come here on Thursday instead for Eucharist and then a meal. Good night, everyone.